Longlegs was directed by Osgood Perkins as well as written by him and stars Micah Monroe and Nicolas Cage. The marketing for this movie has been extremely sparse, so I'm not going to give too many details away, but all you need to know about the basic premise is that there's a serial killer on the loose and there's Detective Lee Harker, played by Monroe, who is trying to find him before any more victims are claimed and trying to see if there's any patterns visible in order to get to him. And that's really all I can say without going into spoilers. And I think that's best. Go into the movie knowing as little as possible. There's been screenings for this going on for a while now, so I know a few people have already watched the movie, but it's going to be out officially this Friday, so when it does come out, you'll get to see the full thing. And the movie's marketing is built as such that you have to see the entire movie to sort of grasp what is going on. Because so far everything is so vague that you don't have any answers. And so if you've watched all the trailers or seen anything so far when it comes to the codes and the cryptic things going around, then if you're, interested in knowing what happens next, you're gonna have to go to the theater to check it out. I went into this completely blind. I went and saw it a few days ago and I had no idea what to expect from it. And I'm glad I've had a few days to sort of think about this because there's a lot of thoughts that I have on this movie and there are things that have sort of built over time. Longlegs for me is one of those movies where it's hard to sort of put a pin on it instantly, at least in my experience, because when I walked out of the movie, my friend also asked me like what I thought of it. I said, Adam, give me a minute. And then about 3-4 hours later, I'm sitting in my apartment and it's sort of building in my head. And the more I think about it, the more I really, really love the movie. I think it's a really well done effort. It harkens back to things that you've seen before, things like Silence of the Lambs and Seven and Zodiac, and there's hints of that throughout over here. In fact, there's a lot of Silence of the Lambs in here. But it's also about what Perkins does with it that makes it its own. And that's something that really kicks in after a while. There's a sense of familiarity in how it sets up certain things in that sense that you might think it goes back to that a little too much, but after a while it really does sort of ditch that and go, all right, now that we've sort of comforted you into the viewing, let's go into the things that are going to make this a little more creepy and unsettling. And those are the two words that I would use the most to describe this movie. It's a movie that very much has an after effect and something that it leaves behind after you've seen the movie. Some might have an effect instantaneously, but it really does get under your skin more and more as you sort of dwell on it. And in that sense, it's a movie that I feel like revisiting it is going to make for a richer experience. I think Perkins does a great job of directing it. This is a very tense movie. It has a very immaculate pace throughout. I mean, you're constantly at the edge of your seat from the very opening, which is pretty chilling, to the very end of it. There are a lot of scary moments, yes, that are sprinkled in throughout. It's not through and through a horror movie though. It's a movie that is that, but it's also more a psychological thriller. It sort of builds and builds along the way. And you're also going into things that are going on in Harker's head as, she's trying to decipher and, get to certain breakthroughs in the case. I really was riveted by a lot of that, and it's written in a way that also manages to make the most of those characters. With Harker, Monroe is someone who is very isolated in this movie. She stays away from most social things. She's very much within herself and not very accessible to the audience. You're not going to learn too much about her out the gate. In fact, you will at some point, but because at the first time you're sort of meeting her, she's very quiet and reserved. And that's something that is played to the strengths here because there is that element of it in trying to solve the case that does come into play. And I think she does a very good job. She manages to play that character very, very nicely. And a lot of the story around her, even as that's going on, seems that way. It sort of keeps things hidden. It keeps some details off books for a while. And everyone surrounding her, particularly supporting actors like Alicia Witt and Blair Underwood, they're both really good too. Especially Alicia Witt, who plays Ruth Harker, her mom. She is someone who definitely does leave her mark on the movie and someone who is looking out for her daughter, but there's just this aspect of her that, again, there seems to be some distance there. And the only thing that she keeps saying to Lee is, keep saying your prayers. And that's something that just seems to stay when it comes to her. Also, Kiernan Shipka's in this movie in an extended cameo of sorts. I did not know about this going in, but she's in the trailer, so I figured I can mention this. She's really good too. And that's a moment worth seeing. But of course, everybody here has come to talk about Nicolas Cage, and everybody wants to know about him. Cage isn't really in the marketing of the movie. You don't really see him. You don't really know too much about what he looks like. You hear his voice, but otherwise you get a few brief flashes in the marketing, and that's it. In the movie, he's a very demented version of himself. There's clearly something going on with him that is very twisted, and stuff that you may have seen him as before is played in such a way too. And there are times where he does go a little over the top, but not in like the funny way. At least not to me. They didn't go crazy and like I see some of those mannerisms there. It plays it sort of in a very twisted way. I'm not gonna give you much more than that. You just have to see the rest for yourself. But I loved him in the movie. I think he played a really, really great hand over here, and I think he was excellent in it and complemented Monroe quite nicely. Something about this movie that is also incredible is the cinematography. This is a gorgeous movie, wonderfully shot, and it is one of the most beautiful movies that I have seen all year. It has a wonderful score as well as a great soundtrack. I mean, movie that, again, it just builds and builds, but it uses those visuals so strongly. I mean, it is genuinely impressive camera work throughout from start to finish. There are some moments which are in different aspect ratio, like 4:3, and it makes use of that space nicely. Then it expands to widescreen also really well. Some great stuff over there. I don't have too many major issues when it comes to Longlegs, except for maybe one tiny little thing. And it's just a very brief thing that I'm going to touch upon. Basically, as Harker is beginning to know more and more about the serial killer and understanding more about what's going on, there's a couple of breakthroughs that happen which are pretty big, and they sort of hint at something a lot bigger after that. And there's an entire thing built around it, like, okay, now we've got this. Now I think we're going to go to this thing, and we're going to probably spend some time getting to the next thing. But some of it feels a little too quickly resolved. Like, I was a little surprised by it. Like, there's one in particular that I thought we went from this breakthrough happening, and then we went to the next thing, like, okay, now on to the next step. And then the next step happens within quite literally like a minute or two. And it's like, all right, we got it. It's like, okay, hold on. I feel like we've had something bigger over there, but sure. It's just a couple of things that I feel like they kind of jumped through. That being said, by the end of the movie, I was very impressed with everything that had happened. I think it's a movie that has been getting a lot of praise and a lot of love online. So yeah, I do want to join in on that. I think it's a really well done movie. I'm very curious as to what people are going to think though, because I mean, you know, it's not necessarily going to be the movie you might think it is. And so I hope you guys enjoy what it is. I hope you guys are, you know, the fans of whatever eventually ends up unfolding. And I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts. I'm going to give Longlegs a 9 out of 10. Pretty high rating. Like I said, I have that one minor gripe with it, but beyond that, nothing much else. Guys, thank you very much for watching, and look forward to more videos very soon. As always, if you like this, please do subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the movies.